Sure.
to us.
Sure.
So first, tell me, well, before we start, do you remember the years that you were president?
Yes.
Okay, good, because
I looked it up.
I've come
When I
across
saw
it.
those
Okay, okay,
questions, I looked it up.
Okay. I
'Cause
have
had
it
to
in
do
front of me, so I just want
Yeah.
to make sure.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how long you've been a part of ACSP, when you were president, and what your earliest memories of ACSP
Okay. I joined the association in 1981. My I was an assistant professor at the University of Iowa at the time in planning, and I came from a geography background, so it was a new association. All of my graduate association work was in geography, and so it was a very new environment for me. And my first memory is a wonderful memory. We were a small group then, maybe 200 at the conference, to give you an idea. And it was in Chicago in 1982, and I walked into the big luncheon hall there, and I'm sort of looking around. I don't know, because I'm a sort of new person to this whole field. Um, I'm looking around to find a place to seat, and Susan Feinstein and Norman Feinstein, who were actually people who I had studied quite a lot, their work while I was a graduate student, called me over and had me sit down with them, and they sort of nurtured me, and it was just a wonderful. I still can see that room and those people, and how inviting the association was to a young, emerging academic at the time. So that's a very pleasant memory, and that was at my first conference of ACSP was in 1982 in Chicago.
And when were you president?
I was president from '05 through '07. 2005, I'm sorry, 2005,
No.
I was not 1905.
Wait a minute.
I know I look it, but.
Oh, come on. So let's talk about your presidency. What did you want to accomplish, and what did you accomplish?
I viewed the presidency, particularly at the time, mostly as a maintenance presidency. So my primary objectives were to keep building JPER, keep building the conference, keep building the interest groups, particularly at the time, FWIG and GPEG, because they were sort of the emerging energy sources in the association. We had just, a few years before, we had just started the administrators conference. That was very important, so we wanted to maintain that. We had just started the JPER writing workshop at the time. I think we didn't have any others. And also, during the presidency, there was the beginning of the emergence of POSIG, the Planners of Color Interest Group. And so we as a board were nurturing that, and June Manning Thomas set that up and started that I think that was in 2006, to be exact, 5 or 6, somewhere in that range. And so we started that, and I'm really sort of for this video, I went back and thought about the things that we were trying to do, and where were the successes and the failures, and I'll tell you some failures. But the successes to me have been the emergence of POSIG and all the stuff that they're doing, the rejuvenation of FWIG and its activities, and a lot of the sort of mentoring activities that ACSP fosters through faculty at universities. ACSP can't do it itself, but we foster it, and it's very inspiring to me to see the progress we've made over time. Now, a couple of besides the maintenance, a couple of my initiatives. One was an initiative to try to get together the top researchers in planning and come up with a way of nurturing increases in resources for planning research. That was a failure. Tried, I got the people together, but it didn't work. We never were able to sort of set up a lobbying kind of mechanism to try to get more federal dollars going into planning research. So that the second thing was I my presidency came on the heels of obviously two other presidencies that were forcing something called the Planning School Performance Measurement project. You guys might remember that. That was, there was a lot of good intended by that, but that failed in and of itself. It was far too complex of a process, too many different interests trying to get that to work. But it did morph into something that I think has turned out pretty positive, which is the relationship between ACSP and Plan Edison and their guide and their ranking system. And Plan Edison has been particularly receptive to our methodological concerns with how they ranked and what they looked at and how they put different sort of ranking systems together. And they're doing that. And Plan Edison's guide has been so much better than our own guide for recruitment of students. If you ask students who go to any of the programs, the two things that they see that then leads them to a particular school to apply to are the Plan Edison guide and the particular websites of the schools. It's not the ACSP guide. The ACSP guide is more functional for planning faculty. We use it a lot, but not for recruitment. So I think that was pretty good. The other things that I was concerned with was board process, and particularly the accounting and budgeting systems that ACSP was using at the time. And we transformed them. Barry Knox was crucial in helping us transform those two things. I believe we started, or we might have been the second one, I don't remember, the consent agenda that's still used in the board, because the board meeting was so hard because there was so much information that was being given out, but plus then decision making that needed to be made, that we really just spent most of our time absorbing information, and then at the last minute we'd have to make decisions, and not in my mind a considered enough way. So that another thing I initiated was a strategic planning session where we actually set aside time at the board meeting, a couple hours, where we had a planning session, strategic planning. We had somebody come in and facilitate that. So the board was much more involved. And those were two good things in terms of the board process and then the accounting. And I think the accounting system for ACSP, I'm just stepping off the board again, is really in good shape, and it's functional, it's understandable. The board can make decisions with the information about the resources, and that's a great improvement since then. So those were some of the things that I tried to do, and some were success and some were failures.
Sure. Where do you see ACSP moving in the future?
We're going through, as Lois just talked about, we're going through a bit of a change in leadership, which is good, and I think we've managed that process pretty well so far. So I'm feeling, as opposed to a year and a half ago, I'm feeling much better about how that process is occurring and how it, I think it's going to be pretty smooth, and we're getting a lot of energy from mid-career and junior faculty. That's going to be very useful, and I think that's a lot of why this change is occurring in the association that Lois was talking about. So that's an issue. I still think diversity is still a major issue, not only in the association, probably less in the association than in our schools, which is interesting. I think our schools need to work harder on diversity issues. As I was talking to you a minute ago, I'm chairing a couple search committees, and this is, we had to do a diversity plan, and it's present on my mind, and it's a problem for my school. I know it's a problem for my school, and I know it's a problem for many other schools, and so it's not an easy one to crack, but that's one big issue. It's still big for the association. It's larger for our member schools, and the other thing that I think that we need to work on is our sort of rebuilding our relationships with ASOP, which is the European Schools of Planning, and with the World Planning Congress. I think that our relationship with with those two groups has suffered recently, and I think it's very important in terms of the nature, the future of planning, and particularly the U.S. that we do that.
Any final thoughts for folks who might be watching the video?
It's a great group.
Join us.
Yep, join it, enjoy it.
Perfect.